Good evening and thanks for coming out on this auspicious occasion, the first Monday Means Community of the new year. I'm sure that some of you, when you heard the word auspicious occasion, I'm sure that some of you thought we might be talking about this football game that's going on tonight. I will say that the program tonight started exactly at 7, and this program tonight is going to last exactly 59 minutes. And so what that means is I will keep my promise to several people in the room, including people who have been on stage, that they will be able to head home and root for those dogs. And oh, what the heck, since we're talking about the dogs, let's just go ahead and do it. Here's how we're going to do it. From here over is go, and from here over is dogs. Are we ready?
Go! Dogs! Go! Dogs! Go! Dogs!
Now we're going to do it a little bit different way. If you're over 40 years old, it's go. If you're under 40 years old, it's dogs. Ready?
Go! Dogs! Go! Dogs! Go! Dogs!
Now we're going to do it just one more way, okay? If you happen to be a man, it's go. If you happen to be a woman, it's dogs. Ready?
Go! Dogs! Go! Dogs! Go! Dogs!
The women won on that one. We do have an emergent Savannah Georgia Bulldog trivia question tonight. And here's the trivia question. Which speaker from our deeply local program that we did last year, and your choices would be Eric Brown, who has, many of you know, great Rastaman, Betsy Bull, who's here, a local Savannian, Sonny Seiler, or Huxley Scott. Which one of these people is the biggest part of Bulldog Nation? Sonny Seiler. All right. And why? Ugga. And what number Ugga are we on? Does anybody really know? 13. Who knows? All right. Excellent. How many people are here for the first time tonight? Wonderful. That is great. We're so glad to have you. I'll give a quick word about Emergent, if I may. We are celebrating our 3rd anniversary tonight, and we've put over 100 people on stage like we're doing tonight, people from all walks and wheels of life over the past 3 years. The posters that you see around the room represent the public relations, the advertising that we had done for each of those programs, and then you'll see a couple of posters with photographs that represent the work we've done. We do other things other than the Monday Meets Community, but the posters really represent the work here. The 2 posters on this side have a year's worth of work on each poster. And again, if you want to sort of learn more about Emergent, one way to do it is to sort of read the posters and see who we've had brought on stage and the topics and that kind of thing, and that will help you get a feel for what we're up to. We do try to connect people from all walks and wheels of life here in Savannah. We think about that in terms of people who are we call come-heres, people who've come here for the art college, people who've come here to retire, people who've come to work at Gulfstream and other reasons, people we call progressive from-heres, and all we mean by that is you don't believe everything your grandfather told you, and people we call nobody hears, HEARS, and those are people who have been marginalized in our community for different reasons. So our interest is to connect those 3 groups of people into a constituency to build a bigger we, if you will. One of the things we try to do is we do try to notice what's emerging in Savannah and create a public conversation in that way. We also do try to notice and honor our history and our unique culture in Savannah, because we do believe that Savannah is Savannah. It's not Charleston, and it's not Austin, and it's not Seattle, and I hope we don't want it to be those places. Betsy Bull, Elizabeth Rainey, AJ Perez, and Emily Earl, who is, and myself, we sort of make up the Emergent Savannah crew, if you will. Coco Pappy, who some of you know, worked with us for 3 years, and Coco has gone on to do great and good things. And that is part of the Emergent Savannah idea, is to find ways that we can help younger people get more active in civic and political life. So for us, that's a great thing. We have been fortunate to have Inky Brittany, who's Brittany Curry, work with us almost every Monday, and you'll see her work here. and you'll also see her work in the back. And this is another way we've tried to help people in Savannah. We've tried to help people in Savannah find different ways to learn, be present to one another, and create ideas and create conversations. Also, we're pleased to have Christopher Danger Mendrala, who records every event, and then AJ puts it up on the Emergent Savannah YouTube channel. I'd also like to take a moment and acknowledge the passing of a Savannah activist, Mr. Philly Meyer. Many of you knew Philly. He was unapologetically left-leaning. He encouraged others to do so, always with good energy, great grit, and humor. And no matter which way you might lean politically, I'd like to ask for just a moment of silence just to honor this gentleman's hard work in our community. Thank you. We do have one tradition, we have several, but one tradition that we call Meet a Stranger, and we'll honor that tradition tonight. So here's how this works. You need to look around and see someone that you don't know and find a way to shake a hand and make eye contact and say hello. You've got about 60 seconds to do that. So let's meet a stranger. All right, very excellent, very excellent, very excellent, very excellent. Now, some of you who've been here before know that we also have the second step in this little tradition, and that's called Hug a Stranger. So here we go. It's time to hug a stranger. Here we go. It's time to hug a stranger. You can hug more than one. All right, very, 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 very excellent. All right, onward. Tonight we have three folks who are going to help us think about the emerging shape of Savannah, perspectives, reactions, and questions. Just to say that the emerging shape of Savannah, many ways to think about this, economically, politically, culturally, educationally, for children, for elders, neighborhood trends, who's moving in, who's moving out, emerging leaders, emerging trends, emerging problems, emerging, the emerging shape of Savannah. So that's our intent tonight, is to have that notion, the emerging shape of Savannah, become more alive in each of our minds as we go into the new year. What is the emerging shape of Savannah?
Open for business.
Well, we're going to talk about that a bit. We are pleased to have three panelists tonight and three civic provocateurs with us, and I thank each of you for being with us tonight. Very kind. I'll introduce each panelist, and they'll share their personal sense of the emerging shape of Savannah. We are listening for clues, we're listening for patterns, and for new thoughts. Our intent tonight, again, is to provoke you to be thinking about the emerging shape of Savannah as we go into the new year. After all three of our panelists share their comments, 8 minutes or less is we have asked. Then we have three folks here who will act as civic provocateurs. Ms. Lisa Ring, who is a Democratic candidate for U.S. Congress, running for the seat now held by Representative Buddy Carter. You want to just stand and let people see if you're Mr. John McMasters, and John is a past Chatham County commissioner. He is a downtown resident and a civic journalist, and I mean that John has, over the past several years, been doing extensive coverage of elections and town hall meetings and that sort of thing via Facebook, and has become, in my mind anyway, a civic journalist. John McMasters. And George Seaborough will be with us in a minute because I know where he is. Oh, good, George. Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, George. And George Seaborough. George is a native of Savannah, lives in Twickenham, just finished up as the neighborhood association president over there, active in local politics, and is the coordinator at Chatham Savannah Citizen Advocacy, a job that we share. Each one of our civic provocateurs are being asked to listen closely to what's being shared and to then offer one observation or amplification of something they heard, and then to offer one question or challenge to something they heard. So that's the role of the provocateur, if you will. And then, depending on time, and we should have plenty, we'll have an open Q&A. But remember, we're leaving at 7:59. And then we'll finish up with a 1-minute meditation. Well, our first panelist is Mrs. Kawanda Riley. She is from Savannah and comes from a family of teachers and educators. I know this. How do I know that? Because I met a Johnson High School teacher 3 nights ago with Kate, who happened to be at the American Legion, and mentioned that Ms. Riley was going to be in our program, and the teacher just said, "She's the best." She's the best. And then she said, "Oh, and her mom's great too." So you and your mom both teach at the same school, is that right? I mean, how cool is that? Ms. Riley, other people believe that she's the best as well. She is the Teacher of the Year at Johnson and is one of the 4 finalists as the Teacher of the Year here in Chatham County. Ms. Riley earned her undergraduate degree at South Carolina State University in Orangeburg and earned her master's at Armstrong State College. She teaches English in the rigorous International Baccalaureate program, and there's much more to say, but let's just think of Ms. Riley as an emerging force here in our community.
Sheesh, that's a hard act to follow. Okay, so when I was tasked with talking about the emerging shape of Savannah, I was at a loss for 2 reasons. The first reason being that I am used to speaking to a classroom of 17-year-olds. And the second reason is because seldomly do people really care about a teacher's perspective. I think we have one of the most significant occupations, but we don't get asked that question a lot. We in education have evolved, and present day, the classrooms of our teens, mine I can say for definitely, and some of you, they're in stark contrast to the 21st century classroom. We in education have evolved, and thanks to advancements in technology, the emerging shape of education in Savannah looks to me like a city infused with culturally diverse, technically savvy individuals enhancing the community through social, economic, and educational change, and these are the individuals and the students that I teach. Thanks to educational advancements in technology, students in Savannah are exposed to resources and tools that will prepare them for a global market. Many of the students I teach have never been outside of the country, and some have never been outside of the city. As teachers, we're responsible for meeting the needs of our students and to enhance their understanding and problem-solving skills. So, to meet their needs, I ensure that I'm producing 21st century citizens. I had to think like my students and incorporate technology through the use of tools like Mystery Skype. Skype has created educational sessions where students are broken into groups of 4. Researchers, note-takers, inquirers, and trackers. They rotate through these roles and connect with one another and through classrooms across the world. Thanks to technology, the students in Savannah have a more rigorous way to investigate the world and apply their global skills. As you can see, this ain't your mama's classroom, okay? There's been a shift in education, one where students are not asked to regurgitate facts and spew data, but are now tasked with problem solving and researching to answer questions and increase knowledge. Data has shown that students learn more effectively and are more likely to retain information from peers and in learning communities. Here in Savannah, educators have made note of this and embedded within our curriculum activities such as Socratic seminars and maker spaces, where students are tasked with creating inventions or solving social issues. Specifically, The learning community for students in Savannah is no longer primarily driven by the teacher and the parents. Peers and other third parties are now contributing more to the learning of some students, particularly those students at risk. Along with shift in education, educators in Savannah have had to do away with ineffective teaching methods, such as lecturing. How many of you have sat through a lecture with your eyes possibly partially closed? Some of you are there now, I see you. A study of secondary students found that high school and undergraduate students in classes with traditional stand and deliver lectures are 1.5 times more likely to fail than students in classes that use more stimulating, active learning methods. SCCPSS within our curriculums throughout the district have embedded activities such as flexible learning environments, where students require a special learning environment is suitable personally for him or her. That means that either the working place or the tools used in the lessons are adapted to one learner for his or her particular learning style. Individual learning paths have been created where each student studies at his own pace. We see this in the Move On When Ready programs, as well as the dual enrollment programs. These programs are beneficial because they allow students in the district the opportunity to obtain a college or vocational education while in high school. This, as a result, lowers the student's educational debt and increases the student's likelihood to attend college and graduate. If you need more evidence, currently in the district, we have an 88% high school graduation rate, which is higher than the entire state of Georgia. Give a round of applause for that. So, how is education in Savannah emerging and where is it going? To me, the future of education will incorporate a few concepts. The very first one is free choice. Though every subject that is taught aims for the same destination, the road leading toward that destination can vary per student. Similarly to the personalized learning experience, students will be able to modify their learning processes with tools they feel are necessary for them. Students will learn with different devices, different programs, and techniques based on their own preferences. Blended learning, flipped classrooms, and bring your own devices will be key terms in the emerging Savannah educational platform. The second will be field experience. Because technology can facilitate more efficiency in certain domains, curriculum will make room for skills that rely and require human knowledge and face-to-face interaction. Thus, experience in the field will be emphasized within courses. Schools provide more opportunities for students to obtain real-world skills that are representative to their jobs. This means the curriculum will create more room for students to fulfill internships, mentoring projects, and collaboration projects within the community. And the last factor would be mentoring. Mentoring will become important. In 20 years, students will incorporate so much independence in their learning processes that mentoring will become fundamental to student success. Teachers will form a central point in the jungle of information that our students will be paving the way through. Though the future of education seems remote, the teacher and the educational institution are vital to academic performances, and here in Savannah, our educators are emerging with the students. What I'm excited to see from education in Savannah, most of all, is the continuing support of the Savannah community. As a teacher, I'm always grateful to those in the community who do not think it's a crime to come into my classroom or talk to my students, who open the doors of their businesses for students, teachers, events, parents. I can't count the many businesses in Savannah who open their doors for my students, specifically the Studio Dance Facility in Thunderbolt and First African Baptist Church for tours and countless museums. All of these opportunities are what will help the emerging shape of education in Savannah maintain its positive trend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. I'd also point out, I think that your husband is here, and also your daughter. So at least in spirit, we have 3 generations in the room, your mom and you and your daughter. Very kind. Thank you so much, and thank you all for coming out. Oh, go Dogs. Our next speaker is Stephen Plunk, and he came to our attention at Emergent Savannah through our Betsy Bull. They went to school together. They attended the Savannah Arts Academy together. Stephen says that his parents spent one afternoon in Savannah, fell in love with our community, and moved here like 2 weeks after. And that, I think, makes him a Savannian, right? If you have that as your as your story of origin. Stephen graduated from Savannah Arts, attended the University of Georgia as a political science and history graduate.
Go Dogs!
He has worked for Congressman Jack Kingston and also the Georgia Republican Party, and he currently works with Old Town Trolley Tours and with many other civic commitments. He chairs the Savannah Young Republicans. We noticed Stephen a while back. We had done a program on immigration, and we had connected the Irish immigration, the Iranian immigration, current conversation about immigration. We had sort of broadened all that out, and we just thought we were just the smartest people in the world. And then we noticed that Stephen had arranged for the Young Republicans to visit a local mosque and attend a service and fellowship with folks that were being threatened and devalued in our culture at the time. And we were, quite frankly, I mean, we thought we should have thought of that. Again, think of Stephen as someone who's emerging in Savannah.
Thank you for the kind words, Tom. Yes, go Dogs. I did go to the University of Georgia, so I'm one of the reasons that we're getting out of here right at 7:59. I held Tom to that. Happy to be here. I've come to a few meetings before. This is my first time on the stage, so if I seem anxious, just assume it's because I'm anxious for the game tonight. When I was thinking over what I wanted to talk about, they gave me the broad outlines of what this was about, but they kind of left it up to me what to speak about. I was thinking about the future. Anytime you talk about what's emerging, what's to come in the community, you're making a guess. No one could have known, could have brought the brightest minds in Savannah together, and no one would have guessed the influence that SCAD would have. No one would have told you what a little book published in the 1990s would mean for this community, what Paula Dean selling bagged lunches out of her cars would go to being. So I want to take a moment to realize that anyone can make a huge change in this community overnight, and that's kind of the first thing I want to get into when I talk about where we can head in this community, is right here in this room, which is mass mobilization politics. I was talking a little bit about that before, and someone mentioned they'd never heard that term, so if you haven't heard that term, what it means is basically the public coming out in ways and getting involved in the political process in ways they haven't in the past. And I think we're kind of living in a golden age of that in 2017 and going into 2018 now. I think we've seen people coming forward for whatever reasons. There's been a lot of frustration, a lot of people expressing pent-up rage, anger at the system, and coming forward. And that can be the Me Too movement. That can be NFL players taking a knee at NFL games. It can be the Women's March. Any of these things that we haven't ever seen before. And I think Savannah was a little bit ahead of the curve on that. We saw it in 2015 in the mayoral election, I feel like. I don't think anyone was expecting kind of the results we saw from that. We've seen it. Who went to one of Buddy Carter's town halls last year? A couple people in here. I did. I went to two, and I can tell you I'd been to ones before 2017, and the difference was night and day. Probably 10 to 15 times as many people in attendance. These are all kind of small microcosms of what mass mobilization politics is and what it means and how it's been a factor in Savannah. And I think Savannah is a community that's always kind of had a reputation for being run by the good old boys club. Am I right in saying that? I've seen a lot of nods. There's no reason that it has to be that. There may be some structural things that have kept people down over the years, but a lot of it is just a matter of being organized and showing up. Politics is a game that's played by who shows up. And I think a lot of people are kind of waking up to that. Certainly at the national level, we've seen it, but more and more people are realizing that the local level is where you can have the most influence by just showing up. And I think it's going to be a huge factor in Savannah going forward. Just in the last year, I think the powers that be have kind of woken up to that a little bit. We saw it, I think it was over the summer, with the cultural budget cuts, where people were outraged and went into the city council meeting and decisions were made and changed because of who showed up and who came and who spoke out. We're seeing it with the vacation rental places all over town. We've seen it with the fire fee recently. That continues. We saw it in 2015. I'll tell you one place that we didn't see it that I think goes to show how important it is is with the police demerger. That's something that I think a lot of people kind of took for granted. I don't know everyone's opinions on it, but we had two sides. We had the city and the county, both of whom said, yes, we both want this to happen. We're both working to make it happen. And then for whatever reason, it didn't happen. I'm not going to point fingers or assign blame, but I think had more people shown up and more people expressed an opinion on the matter and got involved, and I think a lot of it was no one thought it was going to go that far. No one thought that two sides sitting at a table who both ultimately agree on an outcome could not come to an agreement, but it happened that way. So I think that's kind of night and day on what mass mobilization politics means to Savannah going forward and how it's going to be a huge factor. I feel pretty strongly that the future of Savannah should be increased connectivity and solidarity, not less. So I was upset by the police demerger, and I think moving forward, what we should look for, and maybe a medium to long-term goal from the political side of things, should be a merger of the county and city services. I know that's something a lot of people will say can't happen for whatever reason, but I've never heard a lot of good reasons as to why it shouldn't happen. And I think if we see mass mobilization and we see people get out and speak more, it's something that a lot of these things that for a long time we were told, no, that can't ever happen in Savannah. No, that can't ever happen in Chatham County. I think we're going to see that it can because people are demanding it. Nothing can't happen if the people want it to happen and the people show up and the people elect leaders that make it happen. I think whether you live in downtown or you live in the west side or you live out of the landings or you live out of the islands, you have a stake in this community. This is the greater Savannah region, and I think more and more people are realizing that and coming to take their stake in the community and express what they want and sit down with people. And we've broken down a lot of barriers, and I think that's going to continue going forward, but I think when you have these artificial political barriers that divide us, it makes it that much harder to cross those lines. I also wanted to talk a little bit about tourism. I worked in the political arena, so I did that a little. I want to talk about tourism because it's such a hot topic, I know, and I think that's kind of inevitable anytime you live in a city where there's a lot of people that want to come to your city that don't live there, and then there are people that have to live there year-round. There's going to be a difference of opinions. There's going to be a difference of interest between the industries that cater to those tourists and those that don't. But I want to tell you some facts that the average tourist today, what is our second largest industry, stays one night in Savannah, and they come from within 100 miles. And I think the future of Savannah tourism is not going to be that. We're seeing more and more guests that stay for a much longer period of time, and we're seeing guests that spend a lot more money when they're here. And we're seeing that expressed in the huge burst of hotel activity. I'm sure everyone knows that we've seen a ton of new hotel developments going in downtown. Most of the places we're seeing those is in the historic district. We're not seeing a lot of new hotels being built out by the airport, out in Gateway, out in Richmond Hill, out in Pooler, even out on the south side. We are seeing as in historic district because that's where people want to stay when they're coming in here and spending a week in town, spending 10 days sometimes. And I think that's ultimately very good for the community because when someone comes for an afternoon, when they come in from Pembroke or they cross the river from South Carolina or come up from South Georgia, they're going to go have a drink on River Street. They're going to maybe do some shopping on Broughton. They might get a bite to eat at City Market, and they'll ride the trolley. Then they'll stay at a hotel out in Gateway or somewhere out by the airport, and then they'll leave the next day. People that stay here for a week, or people that stay here for 4 days even, are much more likely to come and explore go out to Sandfly. They're much more likely to come explore Starland. They're much more likely to spend a lot of money in the local economy and branch out in ways that affect a lot more visitors. These hotels that are opening in the downtown area are ones that are going to hire full-time professional staff. These are much better jobs, I think, than the ones you see, out of places like the Red Roof Inn, where you have part-time staff paying minimum wage jobs. What we want out of tourism is good, high-paying jobs, and I think that's the future of tourism, and that's what we have to demand. There has to be a balance, obviously. I think hopefully the leaders of our tourism industry understand that the thing that makes Savannah an attractive destination is also what makes Savannah a great place to live, especially in the historic district. If we lose that livability, I think we'll lose what makes people want to come in the first place. There's a lot of things on the table that I think people recognize is not part of the Savannah character, whether that's casinos or cruise ships. I think for the most part people are saying, no, we don't want to become Orlando. We don't want to become Myrtle Beach. No offense to those places. I've been both. Had a fun time. That's not what Savannah is, and that's not what Savannah should be. And I think we're moving in the right direction right now. I think we're seeing more and more that the future is these more long-term guests, and we're seeing more vacation rental homes opening up, and that's caused a lot of controversy. And I think the truce that they struck for now is not going to be a long-term truce. That's going to have to go back and be revisited probably sooner than people think, if the state comes down and lets us know that what we did was against the Georgia Constitution, as it looks like it may be happening soon. But so we're going to have to continue to work together. We're going to have to continue with that mass mobilization politics, and I think we as a community are going to have to explain how we want tourism in our city to proceed. A lot of people complain about all the hotels being developed, I understand, and I think one of the places where that stems from is the issues with zoning we have in the city. We have to find ways to build more low-income, high-density housing, especially in the historic district, if we want it to remain a place where people can actually live, and not a place where you only own a house to rent it out to college students or to rent it out to bachelor and bachelorette parties. We've had a little bit of reform, but I don't think we need reform. I think we need a policy that is reactive, adaptive, dynamic. Right now, the reason if you go around looking at construction sites, 9 out of 10 of them are going to be a hotel, and the 10th is probably going to be a law firm. And the reason that is because only someone with a high return on investment can afford to navigate the system right now. You see that you're always getting easements, you're always getting waivers, and the only way you can do that is if you hire a good lawyer team, you hire someone who knows how to pull the right levers, pull the strings behind the scenes, and that shouldn't be how it is. A low-income housing unit is never going to have the ROI that a hotel is. So we have to make it affordable for people to come into the Savannah community and build good housing where people can actually live here, and make it so that not only the big developers can afford to build hotels in town. So I think one of the big steps is to fix our zoning laws and make it, a lot of these zoning laws are pretty exclusionary and were designed at a time when people were fully admitting that they were exclusionary in nature. We have to relook at these zoning laws that come from the 70s and 60s and figure out how to make Savannah a place that we can all live in. And I think we're, again, moving in the right direction on that. I think we've seen some of the benefits of what this new tourism community brings to Savannah. We've had a renaissance in the restaurant scene just in the last couple of years, I feel, and that's a big product of that. We've had new museums opening, we've had new bars. I feel like there's a grand opening every other week. And those are good things. Those are ultimately decent jobs. Some of them can be high-paying jobs, and they're jobs that often don't require a college degree, which is great for our workforce community here in the city of Savannah. We want jobs that people can rise up in. Most of the large hotels in the downtown area are managed by someone without a college degree, and not a lot of people realize that, but it shows that there is a way. I have a close personal friend who started as a dishwasher at a hotel downtown and is now the general manager of a hotel downtown without ever leaving the industry, without ever going back to school. He worked his way all the way up. And that's the kind of job that we need in the city, and I think that's where we're moving. There's a couple other things I wanted to say real quick. Film industry is a big thing going forward in the city, but we've got to find a way to get the infrastructure for that. Right now, film crews come in, they film, and they leave. Also, we have SCAD students here who are in industries closely connected to film, who also graduate and leave. They move to LA or they move to Atlanta. There's a lot that can be done to keep them here, and I think going forward we're going to see more of that. Building these sound studios here in our community would go a long way to keeping the jobs here, keeping editing jobs here. And then Georgia Southern, I think, is going to play a much bigger role in this community going forward than a lot of people realize. With the merger of Armstrong and Georgia Southern, I know it upset a lot of Armstrong alumni, which I fully understand. But I think long-term, 10 to 20 years down the road, a lot of people aren't realizing that people are going to come to see Savannah as Georgia Southern. With our medical presence here, it's going to become, I think, the dominant portion of the Georgia Southern campus. I think that's kind of an inevitable endpoint, and that will do wonders. And I think that's an emerging aspect in the Savannah community right now, is what that's going to mean down the line. Especially with its location out on the south side, it's going to help a region of Savannah that sometimes definitely the downtown gets an undue amount of attention, but I think that is going to be a big factor going forward. I think my 8 minutes is about up. Thank you.
All right, for you Bulldog fans, it is now 7:35, just to kind of put us in time and place. Stephen, thank you very much. That was great. Go Dogs. There you go. All right. Van Johnson is well known throughout Savannah's political, civic, and religious circles. A 12-year-plus city councilman from the 1st District. Van is known for not going along to get along, but at the same time being able to move ideas and issues along. A couple of things that maybe people don't know about Van is that he's an accomplished musician, having been raised in the church, and for many years has been the driving force behind the Chatham County Youth Council, mentoring and guiding, and this is a true number, hundreds. The Chatham County Youth Commission. May have an alumni there to make sure I get it right. And this is a true number. I mean, he has mentored and guided hundreds of young people through that experience. And Mr. Johnson is also a veteran of the Emergent Savannah stage. Van, thank you.
Thank you and good evening. Realizing that I stand between you all and Georgia football, I will make sure to make my remarks brief. And since these two fine people who have spoken before me basically took away almost everything I wanted to say, I've been led in a little different direction. And it was just a part of something that's been sticking with me for quite some time. It was a conversation that occurred between a religious person and an attorney. And they were having a conversation about how do they become legendary, how do they live forever. And the story that was told was about a man who was going from one place to another. And this story was called Jerusalem to Jericho, and the man happened to fall among thieves. And these thieves came upon this man and they hit him in his head, they robbed him of his raiment, they left him on the side of the road for dead. And the story goes on that a person came by, a priest came by, and saw this man there in that state, and he just passed on the other side of the road. The story goes on further to say that a politician of sorts came by and saw that man, that beaten, bloodied man near death on the side of the road, saw him in that state, and yet passed by on the other side. But yet someone else came by, someone who by their ethnicity didn't necessarily get along, saw that man, had compassion for that man, took that man onto his own donkey and took him to an inn and said, you know what, I don't know this fella, but he's hurt. And I want you to take care of him. And I'm going to pay you in advance to take care of him because obviously he doesn't have anything. And if it's not enough, I'm going to come back and I'm going to see about him and take care of you on the other side. And so this story, as many of you are familiar with, is a story about the Great Samaritan, which is something that has really gathered and has grown throughout my 12 years on the Savannah City Council. Savannah is emerging as a city of empathy. We are emerging as a city that cares. We don't always get it right. But I will tell you, regardless of what people are saying to you, that is not driven by politics. It's not driven by the individuals at City Hall or the County Commission. It's not driven by people on the state level. It is driven by people. It's this super phenomenal quotient that I call Savannah Strong. It is individuals that take time enough to be able to care. Taking our story and transposing it on top of our Good Samaritan story, the fact of the matter is that they took time to take pity on that man laying on the side of the road. We have people in our community that were going from one place to another. They were minding their own business. They weren't bothering anybody, but yet life ambushed them. Something happened. Maybe mama or daddy died. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they had a divorce. Maybe they were downsized in some kind of way. Or maybe they had a health challenge. But something in their life changed that left them on the side of the road. People who were self-sufficient. people who thought they could do for themselves. And I don't know about you, but many of us are only one medical emergency away from being in the poorhouse. But yet, this man, this person is standing there. And far too often, many people in our community walk by. And we say, that poor soul. And we keep on going about our business. Savannah is emerging because more and more we're seeing people say, you know what, I'm going to take pity on that person. But it's not just enough for me to take pity on them, I'm going to take action for that person. That we realize that equality is important, but it's also important to have equity. And that you have to be able to work both of those things, because we have some folks in some communities in our community, in our city, unfortunately, that are still living in an infrastructure that is from the 1940s and 1950s. And they're wanting the same things that everybody else has. They want nice sidewalks. They want nice streets. Yeah. Some of us have been blessed to earn really good incomes. And I will tell you, of the 26% of the individuals in our community that are poor, I'll tell you that the vast majority of them work every single day. Work hard every single day. And they're not able to make the PTA meetings. They're not able to make the things that we're able to make. And then some of us will say, well, they don't care. No, it's just because they're working. And because we're not paying them the types of salaries they need to be able to make to be self-sufficient. And we sit around and say, that's okay. Or now they got to pay a fire fee. I was against that too. We all want those same things, but it's not enough just to take pity and to take action, but it's also an opportunity for us to take responsibility. And I will tell you that the empathy does not require government interaction. I've watched the unusual events of the last 2 years in this community, where we have experienced not only 2 major hurricanes, but also a snowstorm. I shoveled snow in Brooklyn, New York last Saturday, and I shoveled snow in Savannah on Wednesday. Tell me, when does that ever happen? And it exacerbated our problem that we have over 1,000 people in our city that are considered homeless. And all of a sudden, the cold, which was never an issue before, was now a real issue. It's been freezing. And yet it wasn't government interaction that gave these folks coats, or gave them blankets, or gave them food. It was people that thought enough to say, you know what? What if we don't do anything? What becomes of them? So I submit to you that as we work harder and get better, this man, when he took pity, he took action, he took responsibility, but then he said, when I return, I'm going to make sure you're all right. It's good to feed people for Thanksgiving. It makes us feel real, real good. It feels real good to feed people for Christmas and give them Christmas toys. It feels real, real good. But those folks got to go 10 more months before they can get back to Thanksgiving again. And they still got to eat. They still need clothing. So I submit to you as I take my seat, because I'm at 7 minutes and 11 seconds. I said it's going to be 8 minutes. That we have always, unfortunately, always thought that government was the thing that solved all of our problems. And I'll tell you, government is made of people. Regardless of who sits in those 9 seats that I serve with, or the 9 on the county commission, on our legislative delegation, these are folks that live in our communities every single day. But until we have folks that ultimately care about people enough to do the extraordinary, to do the unusual, to do the phenomenal, to be able to do things that are different. I moved here from Brooklyn because I wanted to live in Savannah, not because I wanted to live in Charleston. I hate when y'all say that. We're in Charleston, does this. I don't care about Charleston. We're better than Charleston. I don't want to live in Jacksonville. I sure don't want to live in Atlanta. I live in Savannah because Savannah is still pregnant with possibilities. Savannah is still, we have not reached the zenith of all that we can be yet. We just haven't. And that's the most exciting thing that helps me get up every single day, because Savannah is emerging. We're not emerged. We're emerging. And we're growing. And if you take a look around this room, this is Savannah. On a Monday night with a national game that some of y'all got money on, that you would carry them. to come out and hear three folks just talk about our views about what Savannah is and what Savannah is all about. It is, it was, and it shall be because of us. Us in the singular and us in the plural. God bless. Thank you for the opportunity.
Man, thank you very much. And I do have to say that I was kind of beginning to step up there, step up there, step up there, which is my job, of course. And you were smart enough to say, and I'm at 7 minutes and 11 seconds, which sent the word to me that you were on top of that. So I appreciate that. All right, the next part of our program, we've got 15 minutes. The next part of our program is we have 3 folks who've agreed to be provocateurs. And Lisa, I did introduce you first. Do you mind being our first provocateur? The idea here is to amplify one thing you heard tonight, and then to challenge and sort of question one thing you heard tonight, okay? And if you'll come up, that'd be great. Or I can hold this to you if that's a little easier.
I have to pick which one thing. Surprisingly, what I would like to amplify is what you said about mass mobilization. Since we are on different sides of the partisan aisle, it was surprising to me that we agree on a number of things. And I believe that we've seen people step up and get involved, and we have seen communities mobilize to finally make a difference and not just let things happen to us. I believe that that's the wave of the future, and I applaud you for making that a point, and it's an important point. A question that I have is for Van Johnson, and a challenge. I do believe that Savannah has become a city of empathy. We are people who do step up to the challenge and take care of the needs in the community. What I would say, though, is that as government has not met the needs of people, we have jumped in to not leave people in need. How do we get to a point where government is responsible for serving the people, which is their only purpose, and take it off the hands of churches and people who are doing all of the work, or at least help them? How are we going to merge the two and not be always having to make up for what is lacking in government funding and government organization? What is one step that we can do to hold them accountable for what they are responsible for, instead of taking that responsibility away from them?
Vote.
Good start.
I think voting is the key. Obviously, we deal with who sent, and who sent make those decisions. Hungry people and poor people don't care who's Democrat or Republican. There's no Democrat or Republican way to be vote or to close vote. I think that folks have a responsibility to be our brothers keepers. I think that government should be the opportunity to create opportunities for people, not necessarily to maintain them, but I think for self-sufficiency and self-sustainability, when you're talking about a decision of equity, you're talking about getting people to a place where they can be self-sustaining. And I think that government serves that role. From the federal government on down, I think that unfortunately we may not have people in those offices right now that are in that mindset.
Good job. Thank you, Lisa. Great. Lisa, thank you very much. And nice to see that people who might not have thought they could find common ground, in fact, found common ground tonight. John, I think you were introduced second, so if you don't mind, would you take the second chair? Sure. We are now at 9 minutes.
Okay, we'll go fast. Ms. Riley, thank you for being a teacher. I think you have the most important job in the room. The affirmation part of your comments that struck me is the customization of the way you're teaching, which was new to me, and blended learning. I wish you all the luck with that. And it sounds that it's a better way to teach. My observation, and this goes back a long time, is with 2/3 of your students at or below the poverty line within the school system. I'm constantly amazed that the school board and or the school teachers don't speak more, don't use their bully pulpit to address wages, low wages in Savannah, and what Van was saying about trying to be a good Samaritan. I think that the school board has an opportunity and a responsibility to speak to the dreadfully low wages that result from the tourism and hospitality industry. But thank you for what you do. Stephen, the affirmation that I have for you was the interesting comment that the status quo, or the good old boy network, is adapting to the new mass politics. I hope that's true. I think they're just trying to figure out a way around it. The concept of low wages and poverty at 26% in the city of Savannah for almost 4 decades now has not been enhanced by a larger tourism base. It could have been, and it could have been in the fashion that you described, and that is with the flexibility that developers want with variances in the zoning in terms of height and mass and setbacks. Those are all golden opportunities to negotiate for higher wages, which we seldom do. I know Van has done some of that. It would be nice to have that in writing. We'd like to have that verified, but that's the way to go in my mind. Lastly, Van, on your, you do great work. You know, I love you and support you 100%. The empathetic change in the culture of Savannah is something that's desperately needed, but it has to get transformed into action vis-a-vis wages. The only observation that I can put on your comments relative to City Council is I was just so surprised that Council did not open up the Civic Center or any public buildings to provide shelter in that frigid weather that we had for 3 or 4 days.
Thank you, John. George Seaborough will close us out with 2 questions, and I'll kind of close us out for the evening because, remember, 7:59.
For me, the thing that I saw that could be amplified is we need to, I agree with you, that we should build upon our industries like tourism and the film industry, but we must also look for creative ways to bring new businesses to Savannah. I always like to give the instance of Dirt. They start their people off with $14 an hour. I was told a story that a chamber came to them and said, hey, you can't do that. But they said, no, we're going to pay people what they should be paid. And so if we are really creative at CETA and with Savannah City Council, they can attract bigger, better businesses here to pay people a better wage. The challenge, this is not towards you at all because you can't do anything about this, but the challenge is that we do have a lot of programs and systems for students that are at risk, but we also have students that are lost. We have 12 felon schools inside of our system, and also on top of that, we are tucking students away in the Build a Bridge program over at Groves High School, and we now have an elementary in-school suspension program at East Broad, where children are getting the bare minimum education. And so if we could look at ways to use the new technology and new techniques to reach and touch all of the children in the system, because in my opinion, we're currently not. I know in your class we are. But then we would begin to see our society, community, and culture really change for the better. And that's it.
Thank you, George. Before we go, I want to it really is important, I think, for people to just take a second and just look around the room, if you will. I mean, just turn your heads and kind of look around the room and notice what an interesting group of people there are here tonight. How many people are from here, by the way? How many people are from here? Born and raised. How many people have come here? Ah, that's an emergence. All right. Here's what I'd like to ask you to do before we leave. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and just think about this notion of what's beginning to emerge in Savannah in your mind. We've heard 6 people talk about what's going on in their minds, but now the challenge is for each of us to intentionally think about this in terms of what's beginning to emerge in Savannah. What's beginning to emerge that I'm encouraged by? What's emergent that I'm discouraged by? So I'm going to meditate on that for about 30 seconds. What is emergent in this place at this time? What's beginning to shift? What are the little teeny dots out there that we can't quite connect yet? But with a few more dots, we'll begin to see it. That's what we're trying to get everybody in the room thinking about. What's beginning to emerge in Savannah? Now, as you know, we have a third tradition. In our third tradition, we have 2 more traditions. One is that everybody who's on stage or with the microphone before you leave, if you'll stand in front of this and we'll get a group picture. So that's one tradition. And then the second tradition is that if you're interested and would like to come to the American Legion right around the corner, that really is where we do solve the world's problems. Because it does turn out that if you have chicken wings and beer, things tend to work better. So if you feel like you heard something tonight and you want to kind of massage that, that's a good place to do it. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for coming out on the night. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you on February the 12th with another program. Good.